Ever since we moved from Los Angeles, my dad's favorite store has been Aviator Nation. It's something of a clothing company that sells vibrant clothing with simple designs. I never fully understood his appeal to it, but on my dad's birthday in 2020, I decided that I wanted to go to Aviator Nation's San Francisco location to buy him a sweatshirt. When my friend and I parked in the city, we got out of the car and realized there was a parking meter. I checked to see if there was any time left on the meter, but we'd gotten unlucky. I turned back around and saw my friend searching through all of the crevices, trying to find some coins for the meter. But after 10 minutes, we were left with 2 pennies and a dime, so I walked back over to the meter to check for Apple Pay. To my astonishment, the meter that had just had no time left had magically been granted 2 hours. I looked around to see if there was anybody who could have come by and secretly helped us out, but we were completely alone. Now, at this point, you may be asking yourself, why am I telling you this story? A lot of us have weird, almost magical experiences like this, but the reason I tell you this story is because of how much my mom, who passed away in November of my sophomore year from stage 4 sarcoma, would have found it funny. I mean, imagine my friend and I frantically scrambling around Hayes Street in San Francisco in search of a quarter, only to be instantaneously relieved by a miracle. As weird as it sounds, in that moment, I felt her with me. After my mom passed, so many people told me that it was okay to feel however I felt. The only thing is, I didn't know how to process my own emotions. I knew that I would have to work through this, but how? It's not really like there's any guidebook. I'm a senior now, but my story starts all the way back in my sophomore year. After my mom passed, I spent all of my energy trying to ignore my feelings. I distracted myself with soccer and school to not allow myself any time to process. But as most teenagers learn, your feelings will catch back up to you. Over a span of 2 months, I lost all motivation to do schoolwork, put effort into my relationships, and even pursue hobbies such as music production and soccer. I decided to see a therapist, and it wasn't until I sought out this professional help that I realized that the lack of motivation that I had been experiencing was grief. He explained to me how the 1.5 to 2 year time frame was generally when those long-term effects began to settle in, and how my attempts to push away those emotions from the start only amplified these effects on me now. Now that I realized that what I had been experiencing was grief, my mind went to what I've been told about grief. When we think about grief, we think about a process with 5 stages. The Kubler-Ross cycle details these 5 stages as denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. The first stage, denial, is a stage I struggle with particularly. Denial is the stage where you deal with the shock factor of your loss. In my case, I had to become acclimated with not seeing my mom around the house anymore. After my mom passed, I returned to school, and my routine stayed somewhat similar. However, when I'd return home from school, I often found myself looking around the house for my mom in the places that she would always be in. My mom often acted as a peacemaker between any disagreements in our house, and after she passed, I assumed that role. Now, taking on her responsibilities helped lessen the effects of her absence. Well, at least partly. Now, some things you can pray for, but it's because you're okay with it turning out whichever way it does. But with something as difficult as losing your mom, it's really hard to be okay with it if it doesn't turn out the way that you prayed it would. I am a very laid-back person, but this genuinely angered me so much that it clouded my hope. I felt like my family and I had prayed so much, only for our prayers to be left unanswered. I began to question my faith, and I even became angry with God. Now, overall, my emotions were very unpredictable. My happiness would come in waves, with some days feeling like I was at the peak with joy, and other days feeling like I was drowning at the bottom of the ocean. In junior year, I struggled with my biggest bout of depression, which, at the time, I hadn't known was grief-induced. These emotional waves came on somewhat of a monthly basis, but otherwise didn't really exemplify any specific pattern. Even within a day, my emotions could change from morning to night. The acceptance stage is taught as the last stage, and reflecting on how at the beginning, all I did was bottle up my emotions and grief, as I grow to live in the acceptance phase every day, I've learned how important it is to not bottle it up. As I lived through these stages, I came to understand that they are portrayed in this assigned order, but there's nothing really definable about any of these stages. They all blend together, like when you're a kid at an ice cream shop and you get 5 different flavors and they mix together into one big gooey mess. Now, just like melted ice cream, your journey with grief may be a difficult, sticky one. And you may even still find remnants of it even after you think you've cleaned up the entire mess. The stages of grief mix together, go out of order, and revert so much. As individuals on unique paths, it is impossible for grief to be in concrete stages. I do believe that the stages give you a decent expectation of how you will feel, but this idea that they are in a fixed order is misleading. Grief is a personal journey, and what you will experience is unique to you. In my case, I never underwent a bargaining stage. This could be due to my age, my mental stability, or my own experiences. There are far too many variables to pinpoint a concrete timeline. Someone may enter a depressive episode before experiencing denial, or even experience both stages at the same time. And although this journey to grief is unique, the solutions are similar. Take time for yourself, tell your story, ask for help when you need it, and always remember that it's not about what happened to you, it's about how you come back from it. Thank you.